Hey everyone, welcome to Neil Talks. My name's Neil and it's time to talk QI. This week's recommended episode is from the most recent series, from Series S, episode 4, and it's called Sideshows, Stunts, and Scavenger Hunts, and I feel like I'm going to have to be very careful with my enunciation to not put myself into a world of trouble with the censors this episode. I also happen to know who's in this episode. We've got Rosie Jones, who I know from Cats Does Countdown. We've got Nish Kumar, who I know from Taskmaster, and we have Gyles Brandreth, who I know from all of you commenters. He's been recommended to me as someone I ought to check out a bunch. I don't think I've seen any of his episodes, but he seems familiar to me, so I'm not sure if I've seen him on something else, or or he reminds me of somebody else, or what. But yeah, he comes very highly recommended, and I feel like were Rosie and Nish on Cats Does Countdown together? I've done so many shows, on so many British panel shows at this point, I can't recall the circumstances of everybody that I've seen. Maybe they were together, I'm not sure. Do they work together a bunch? Rosie and Nish? I don't know. Do they tour together or something like that? Anyhow, beyond the title and who's in it, I don't know anything about the episode, which is the way I like it. Let's jump right into it. This is Sideshows, Stunts, and Scavenger Hunts.
Welcome to QI, where tonight we're swanning around Sideshows, Stunts, and Scavenger Hunts. Roll up, it's Rosie Jones. Wild man of Croydon, Nish Kumar. The freak of nature that is Gyles Brandreth.
Okay. Yeah, he's very familiar to me.
Alan Davies.
We've got a small crowd. I guess this was still lockdown, smaller crowd rules for filming.
How did this woman pick up men?
Ooh.
With her arms.
Maybe with her teeth or something.
Is she just a strong woman?
Acts of all time.
She's got good biceps.
It's the very first female bodybuilder.
Are we allowed to make personal remarks, or will I have to apologise?
She's dead, so I think it's fine.
She was a fine figure of a woman.
She's called Katie Brumbach, a.k.a. the Great Sandwina, and if we pull out on this picture, we can see that there's rather more to her than we had first anticipated.
Yeah, I feel like I need to say it.
Yes.
She's fit. Oh, the things she could do with me. Oh.
She was the second of 16 children.
Whoa.
Her
Jeez.
father could reportedly lift more than 500 pounds with a single finger. And in her spare time, she became the vice president of the circus's suffrage movement.
Oh, wow.
Basically, she's a good egg.
Yeah.
And she was fit.
I learnt this when I was a very little boy, because I was born in Germany after the Second World War. And my parents engaged a couple to look after me as a sort of nanny and governess. And they were strong people from the local circus. So almost the first things I learnt were to walk the tightrope and to stand on my head. We can all do this experiment now. Put your hand on your head.
Okay.
Like this. Now, with your other hand, attempt to lift your arm off your head. From underneath, just push it aside. You can't do it, can you?
No.
You really cannot do it. The strongest person in the world, that strong woman, could not lift my hand from my head.
Why can't I do that?
It's all done with mechanics.
Someone told you that when you were 2.
Yes.
And you remembered it.
Yes,
Ow!
I've treasured it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Never asked Giles a follow-up question. Her real name is Katie Brumbach. She got it from the very first male professional
Oh,
bodybuilder.
Eugene Sandow.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
There he is. Look at that.
Hang on, are we just... How did you know that?
Because he was my great-uncle's godfather.
What?
He was incredibly famous. Even today, the Mr. Olympia competition, the trophy is a statue of Sandi. He could do a somersault holding a 24-kilo dumbbell in each hand. He could lift a grand piano with an orchestra of 8 on top.
Is he enormous? It's hard to tell there. Was he 7 foot tall? Or something?
I think he wasn't that big, and the leaf isn't that big. He wasn't.
Now, what's the best way to win a non-stop speaking competition?
Oh, look.
Oh, look,
There's a picture of me in younger and happier days, making the longest speech in the history of the world.
What?
I spoke on that occasion only for about 3.5 hours.
Oh.
And eventually I retired when I'd spoken non-stop for 12.5 hours.
Did you actually make notes, or do you just...
No, you had to do it without notes, without repetition, and keeping the audience there. That was the challenge.
Did you have a wee, darling?
That's the whole problem. I knew I'd need to go to the loo. But this was for a charity, and they supplied me with an appliance. It's a sort of tube thing.
Isn't that uncomfy?
Well, initially, but it's quite exciting, actually, as the evening wears on.
Do you know, it's really funny. They said, see if Gyles can be persuaded to reminisce. And you were. There was a thing in 1928 called the Noun and Verb Rodeo, and it took 4 days. And you could say whatever you wanted as long as you spoke for 22.5 hours a day. Could you do that, do you think?
Yeah, certainly.
Don't start. I mean... Another competitor used his words to propose to a fellow player who used her time to explain why she wasn't interested. The longest speech is a filibuster in the United States Senate, which was a man called Storm Thurmond of South Carolina, US Senator in 1957, and he spoke for 24 hours and 18 minutes. It's a record that still stands. Not my favourite person, because he spoke against the Civil Rights Act.
Yeah. What a prick.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, don't speak ill of the dead, apart from him.
Yeah.
I think I can beat that because all I need to do is say like 4 sentences.
For me, the challenge really was keeping the audience awake, as you can imagine. You know.
Sorry, I drifted off. I wasn't listening.
I see what you did there, Sandi.
The late 1930s, swallowing live goldfish was a competitive craze. Final record before it was completely banned was a student swallowing 210 fish in one sitting.
What?
One of my favourite vaudeville acts of all time, the great Haji Ali, the great regurgitator. He would swallow increasingly improbable things and then reproduce them in an order specified by the audience.
Oh, brilliant.
So he could swallow 50 hazelnuts and an almond and bring the almond up at the moment requested by the audience. Yeah.
That's awesome.
His greatest trick, right, he would swallow some kerosene, then some water, then he would regurgitate the kerosene, set it on fire, regurgitate the water from 6 feet away and put the fire out.
How do you discover you're good at that?
This is Lepitomane in reverse, isn't it?
It is, exactly. Yeah.
Out of his backside, Lepitomane could blow out candles at a distance.
Well, darling, he could do the whole of the Marseillaise, apparently.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You can do that.
No, I can't do that. I can't... Look.
You cannot imagine the stage.
Are some of my other records on your list?
No, darling, what are your other records?
Oh, well.
Oh, I
Well.
can't believe I asked you that.
Oh, well.
The longest ever screen kiss?
You?
Me?
Were you alone?
This is in the 1980s, and I was on a programme called TVAM with a lovely presenter, Anne Diamond. And she agreed on Valentine's Day to give it a go. And so we began kissing, the clock was ticking, and unfortunately, about 2 minutes into our kiss, we had to go live to Moscow for coverage of President Brezhnev's funeral. So we did not break the record on that occasion. But a year later, I thought I'd go to do it again. And there is the lovely Cheryl Baker from Bucks Fizz.
I remember.
Well, she's still lovely. She's still brilliant.
Anne said no.
Anne said 2 minutes was enough.
Anne said, how's the Russian president before we start?
The long and the short of it is I've held the record for the longest ever screen kiss with Cheryl Baker.
And
Okay, but televised, not movie kiss.
I had to do a sex scene in a train toilet.
Oh.
It was a studio set, and so to get the idea, that the train was moving. They had a light outside the window and a spark with a board, and that's all I remember. It was all very heightened passion, and then there was just the other side was a man just going like...
Easies, which of you would have made the best bootlegger?
I want to say Rosie Jones.
You would be right.
Oh,
Why?
really?
Why might that be?
I just think she gets away with a huge amount.
Is it because I'm a cute little lady?
It's the reluctance of officers to search women. It was thought inappropriate.
Yep.
It's hard to believe women took advantage of this. And they reckon female bootleggers outnumbered men by about 5 to 1.
Oh, interesting. Quite interesting.
The sworn enemies were 2 prohibition agents called Isidore Izzy Einstein and his partner Mo Smith. They specialised in costumes. My favourite is that several times Einstein, who's the one on the right, went into a bar and identified himself as a prohibition agent, and the barman thought it was hilarious and let him in. Look at this. That's very Some Like It Hot, isn't it? Yeah. Anybody know another country that enforced prohibition?
Not Canada.
Iceland.
It all came from Canada.
So 20 years they didn't have alcohol at all.
Really?
Yeah.
They come late to a lot of things. I think I'm right in saying that they didn't allow television on Thursday nights until quite recently.
One of the things that they did do was once a month, particularly in Reykjavik, they would turn out all the streetlights and somebody would give a lecture on the National Public Radio about the stars that evening.
That's amazing.
Can we confirm the no TV on Thursday night thing, though?
My wife and I went, and we were staying with the Prime
Is
Minister
that
and her wife.
a
So
real
it was just
deal?
the 4 of us. And we were shown upstairs to bed by the Prime Minister. She said, "Here are the spare towels. Or if you get up in the night, don't touch the red button." I said, "Oh, what happened?" She said, "The SAS will come." What career skills can you pick up at a fun fair?
Someone who throws things?
Well, I think the fact that the woman is riding a machine is a bit of a clue. It's flying.
What?
The first ever plane-themed funfair rides were invented to train pilots to actually fly. And so it was a small model of a plane, and it could
Okay,
tilt
so this is
and
like
turn and roll.
early version of the Last Starfighter.
Is it the same for driving a car and dodging?
Exactly the same, darling. Yes, learn that. Sahara Maxim, that's him with the white beard there. He built a fairground ride. His captive flying machines are a Blackpool ride. They're still operating today. It's possibly the oldest fairground ride in Europe. And the guy who built it for him is the guy in the other bowler hat, and his name is Field Trickett, and that is my great-grandfather.
Oh, that's so
Turning into
cool.
me.
Which is easier to do, get a sonic boom out of a potato, unboil an egg, or eat your own umbilical cord?
Is that what an umbilical cord looks like?
Not the one in the middle.
I bet you can unboil an egg somehow. I don't know how.
You know our friend Brian Blessed? He cut an umbilical cord with his own teeth.
Why?
Because he was... This is a true story, and if were he here, he would tell it to you more concisely. And I think he keeps a little bit of it in a sort of jam jar at home.
Please stop.
What?
So we're talking about the University of Chicago's scavenger hunt. It is possibly the most challenging scavenger hunt on the entire planet. The challenges have included in building a nuclear reactor and getting yourself circumcised. Both have been achieved. It's fiendishly hard. First of all, because they don't tell you what the list is. You have to find the list yourself. Now, we've done this, Alan. We did unboil an egg on the show.
How does one do that?
What you do is you inject urea into the egg.
Piss!
Yes, darling, I said urea just to be nice. Yes.
You two wee on it.
We have people for that.
That's what the elves do.
And one person had to eat their own umbilical cord, which they did manage, because it turned out their mother had kept it as a souvenir, and he put it in an American cake called a Twinkie and ate it.
But why?
Yeah.
So you asked that question because you're not a boy at university.
Fair enough.
Nobody's found a way to get the potato to break the sound barrier yet.
Oh.
Although, do you know how McDonald's make their French fries? They fire them at 75 miles an hour through a grid of knives that chop them.
What?
Yes.
I want to see that.
1999, a pair of physics students at Chicago earned 500 points by building a working nuclear reactor in their dorm using scrap aluminium and carbon sheets, and it was capable of producing high-grade uranium.
What?
So this is not exactly a nuclear reactor.
Oh, I
but,
was
you know,
about to ask.
I want you to take your 2 balloons and turn them into a pair of slippers.
It isn't just a case of wham your feet in.
Putting your foot into the
Just
balloon.
straight in the balloon.
No,
Okay,
because it would break.
Your people off, put it in the blender.
Rosie's sick.
How can I say this? No.
It's never a good sign when she goes quiet for a bit.
Just having a think there. So you blow the balloon up and get the friend to just hold like that, and then let the air out.
Oh,
That's kind of cool.
Isn't that clever?
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, are you into this sort of thing? I was brooding about the circumcision thing.
Oh, I think it was boys only, darling. So the scavenger hunt, as a sort of an idea, was a brainchild of a marvellous woman called Elsa Maxwell, and she threw the very first one in Paris in 1927. Somebody had to get a black swan from the Bois de Boulogne Park.
Do we get a bonus for knowing who the other fellow is?
Is it your granddad?
A shoe of the music hall star Miss Tanguette. Do you know about Miss Tanguette?
I do know about Miss Tanguette. She was a great favourite of Maurice Chevalier.
She was, in her day, the highest-paid female entertainer in the world. Yeah. The University of Chicago's scavenger hunt stunts are usually completed by a bunch of undergraduates.
I see what you did there,
Looks
too.
like a scrotum and loves doing press-ups.
Oh, Nish.
It's going to be something from the animal kingdom, is it?
Yeah.
Something wrinkly and undersea?
Underwater, certainly. It's the pleasingly named Titikaka water frog.
It's my favourite one.
Oh, South American.
If you're looking at your scrotum and you're seeing eyes, go to the doctor.
Yeah. You're looking at your scrotum and it's looking back
Yeah,
at
and
you.
it's looking back at you, yeah.
There's relatively little oxygen in the lake, so the frog's huge skin surface allows it to absorb as much oxygen as possible through the skin.
Oh, it breathes through its
If
skin.
it ever needs extra
Cool.
oxygen, it can do press-ups at the bottom of the lake. In 1968, when Jacques Cousteau visited, and he estimated at the time that there was about 1 billion frogs in the lake.
In one lake?
It's a big lake.
Now,
big lake.
there is possibly as few as 50,000 left.
No.
Yeah.
People eat these, do they? Are they a delicacy?
Apparently so.
I have a sort of scrotum aversion, I must say.
Well, finally we found something we have in common. Here's a bit of a spectacle. How do you think a fight between a submarine and a stallion would go?
Stallion's a horse. A
Yes.
submarine is a submersible ship.
Nothing gets past you.
They rarely meet.
So, 1915, there was a British submarine which fought and lost a battle with Turkish cavalry.
What?
Yeah. So, British Captain Lieutenant Commander Martin Dunbar Naismith. Not
No.
your godfather.
Now, you're going to think I'm inventing this.
I'm afraid that submarine might have sailed, Gyles.
This man was born on the 1st of April, 1883. He won the Victoria Cross.
Yes.
And I know about him because I live in the house in which this man was
What?
born. It's true. It's absolutely
What?
true.
So he was beaten back by the Turkish cavalry. But he, horseman aside, he was an exceptional captain. Naismith had a tremendous reputation for gallantry. So he always used to present boxes of chocolates to any women travelling as passengers on Turkish ships that they'd captured.
He just had chocolates on hand for female prisoners.
I feel like we've really breezed past the fact that this whole show has turned into, like, a posh, white version of Slumdog Millionaire.
His navigation was incredibly basic, and so the crew found their way usually by bumping along the bottom of the sea and trying to match the bumps with the contours on the map. They baked bread daily in an electric oven, but they did not have enough electricity to both power the oven and to run at full speed. They had to choose. between bread or speed.
Oh, bread.
Always bread.
Horses were actually transported on submarines in the same year. Do you know
I
that?
bet they love that.
They were taken from Britain to the Battle of Gallipoli in the Dardanelles, 10 horses at a time in a submarine. Wow.
Crazy. Sounds terrible.
What do you think would happen if two submarines battled each other underwater?
Is it like battleship?
D3.
Oh, damn it!
The real problem is, until recently, very hard to tell how deep the other sub is submerged because they're...
Really?
it's
You don't know where it is?
No, exactly. Although, can I just say, the Germans had the right idea. Not all their U-boats were engaged in deadly activities. They had the submarine U-1231, and it was a North Atlantic travelling off licence. It used to go around and
The
deliver
party
booze.
boat?
Yes. It delivered booze to the other U-boats. Which country are ponchos from?
Mexico.
No, Peru. I want to say Peru, but...
Like a Bolivia.
Bolivia, no.
Portugal.
No.
England.
England, I wanted to be England. What did you say that
Peru.
is correct?
Whoa. Rosie's excited.
This is the greatest moment of my life.
You knew that, right? Wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah. It's not all about me.
But the first came from Peru's Paracas Peninsula in... You knew all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really bored now.
Frustratingly, I've just remembered a story from my travels.
No one cares.
Wow. Harsh.
I care, Nish.
This is why your chat show is never going to take off.
Now, what's the highest British mountain?
See, it's
Ben
not going to
Nevis,
be the
right?
one we think it is.
What do you think it is?
I think it's Ben Nevis.
Then it's not going to be
Okay.
there.
Oh, is it going to be an offshore territory? Some British island?
So I said
Something in
British mountain, but I did not say inside Britain.
No.
Yeah. In the Caribbean or something?
The British Antarctic Territory contains Mount Hope, 3,239 metres. It's certainly the highest mountain that Britain claims to own.
Sure.
No one really owns Antarctica, though, even though you have administrative areas and you run the research stations there. It's not considered your nation's territory.
Even excluding the mountains in the British Antarctic Territory, there are so many higher peaks in South Georgia and St Helens that Ben Nevis doesn't even make the top 10.
Yeah, South Georgia, totally fine.
But here's the thing. So there's some volunteers, 2006, they're picking litter off the slopes of Ben Nevis, and they suddenly came across a church organ quite near the summit. It was entirely by itself. This is obviously... obviously.
We're so gullible. We were like, whoa! Whoa, that's massive!
There was a local Highland Games athlete called Kenny Campbell, and he said he carried it up the mountain for charity in 1971. He played Scotland the Brave, and then he couldn't be asked to bring it back down again. Now, where's the biggest fire in the solar system?
Is it the sun?
No. The sun isn't on fire. There's no oxygen.
The sun isn't on fire.
It's
Not
fusion.
on fire.
Is it not?
The sun's not on fire.
But it's a nuclear reaction, not a chemical one, which is what fire is. It used to be that oxygen levels were higher on Earth than the 21% that they are today, and it's a good thing that it's not higher, because if it was 25%, for example,
Explosive
then
atmosphere.
even wet plants could burn. There seems to be, as far as we know, no fire in the solar system anywhere other than Earth. The only reason there's a meaningful amount of oxygen on Earth is photosynthesis. So if there's no life elsewhere in the universe, there simply can't be any fire either.
You seem to know a lot, Sandy. Can you tell us when is the world going to end?
Tuesday.
I mean, is there going to be a cataclysm?
Possibly, darling, but in a million years. And I mean, you'll still be working, but I... Scavenging for scraps in last place with -16. It's Nish.
Boom. -60.
That's a good score for fourth
It's
place.
Gyles! With -5, Alan! With a positive 6 points, it's Rosie!
Even without the Ben Nevis klaxon, Gyles wouldn't have won.
Good night.
All right, Gyles Brandreth. I'm assuming he started off as an actor, but he feels like he's got one of those massively long, gloried careers that spans into theater and presenting and who knows what else. Just sort of one of those cherished figures in the public eye, I suppose. I love characters like that just have stories about everything and everyone, and they seem to have met everybody in history throughout their lives, very much the sort of Forrest Gump effect. But it does make you wonder, like, how much research do the elves do? Do they know that Gyles is living in the house of this ex-submarine commander and therefore pose a question about the submarine commander? Or is it pure coincidence? Because, Nish is right. That, it's posh white millionaire, it's the posh white version of Slumdog. I mean, it's hugely entertaining television, though. Man, so much fun. First of all, I'm not surprised in the least that he at one point held the record for the longest speech. I'm a little surprised that at one point the longest speech in the world was only 3 some hours. I feel like that's not so hard. I mean, I've talked that long about ranking characters from Lost, but I also know that it sounded like that record ramped up quickly over the years. And someone really needs to beat Strom Thurmond's filibuster, because that man needs to be erased from the record book. Not from the history book, but from the record book. He doesn't deserve any accolades. Terrible human. Look into it. Rosie's great. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is, because she doesn't ignore her disability, but her disability certainly isn't the primary focus of her sense of humor either. Some differently abled comedians make their disability the point of their comedy. That's how they're known. They're the blind comedian, or whatever, and she's a lot of fun. But she's like surprisingly raunchy. I don't know. Maybe is it just funny because that's not our first perception of somebody with? I'm gonna embarrass myself here. Is it cystic fibrosis or is it muscular dystrophy that she has? You guys are gonna tell me. I apologize. I should know better. But in a way, the fact that I don't know reinforces my point. That's not the point of her disability. Just as many of her jokes are about her sexuality and that sort of thing. And yeah, she's a riot. Nish is great, but I was right there with Rosie and Nish at, about 2/3 of the way through the episode, where it just felt like every new QI fact was directly related to Gyles. Whether it's his great uncle's godfather, who's the original bodybuilder, or he knows this person in the photo, or he lives in this dude's house, or whatever. You just assume the man wrote the episode. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I love that there are episodes like this, ones that will probably go down as, quote, classic episodes, still coming out this deep into QI's run. This is from the most recent series, and it's still as strong as it ever was. I really appreciate that about this show. It's tough to find a show that's planning on probably running at least 26 series, remaining strong for that entire duration, especially with turnover at the helm and everything else. So, man, kudos to the show, kudos to the elves, kudos to everyone behind the scenes for running it, but kudos to the guests for still committing to the format and loving it and having so much fun with it, because that's the heart of what makes each episode great. Anyhow, I'm happy. That was awesome. Thank you guys so much for spending a little bit of time here on Neil Talks with me today. Don't forget to leave a comment if you've got another episode out there that I haven't reacted to yet that you'd love me to see. And until next time, everybody, take care, stay healthy, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.